everybody, Cork Pie here, and welcome back to another video. Today we are going to be reviewing the super markers. So I got these as a holiday gift this holiday season, and these are alcohol-based markers. This set here is, I think, about $40 online and has 80 colors. Now just a quick comparison for this to Copic markers. Copic markers for 72 Copic markers online goes for $200 or more. So this is a significantly cheaper alternative, and we're going to see how they do. Here are all the colors close up just so you can see a general idea of what colors we have. I'm going to have to do some kind of chart for these bad boys, and I'm super excited to see how they're going to work. So let's get right on into the video. So first things first, let's take a look. Let's take a closer look at the markers. So I'll just grab a random marker here. So on one end we have a bullet nib, and on the other end we have a chisel nib. So these markers themselves would more closely compare to the Copic original markers versus the Copic Sketch or Chow, because the Chow and Sketch both have brush ends instead of the bullet tip. So that's going to be a direct disadvantage to these markers because I'm comparing them to the Chow and Sketch. So I would say that they blend rather well on this paper. I would sadly have to say that Copic does do a better job at blending their markers because, I mean, this is Copic made paper for Copics. This one, it dries a lot slower, so it has more time to blend together. This one dries pretty quickly. I mean, these markers are pretty good, but I wouldn't say their blending is the most perfect that I could get from a marker. I mean, both markers are actually doing a rather good job at blending together, even after they've been sitting there for a little bit. So I would say these markers aren't doing horribly bad so far. So we're going to stick with this paper for the rest of the video. So the first thing I did was I took my 80 markers and I sorted them by their color family. I was actually surprised by how long this took, but I guess I didn't realize how long it would take to sort 80 markers. The next thing I did after that was I started a swatching chart. I looked all over the internet to see if the company made their own or some other person made one specific to super markers, but unfortunately I was unable to find one, so I just made one myself. Like Copic has one made, so I figured there might be, but since it is such a uncommon brand name, it was kind of expected that they wouldn't have one. Swatching was fun. I got to see a lot of colors, and they're actually relatively close to their caps. I would say they might even be a little more accurate than Copic markers in their caps, because honestly, Copics are not accurate at all in their cap names. But I was very confused when I saw a yellow-red color that looked green. I was very, very confused. I think that was mislabeled. Guys, what is this nib? What happened to this chisel nib? There's literally like warts growing out of it. This is live action while I'm trying to fill in my swatch sheet, and this is what I see, guys. I don't know how to respond to this. I don't know if they can like pick off or something like that. Okay, I can scrape it off, I guess, but that's uncomforting. Oh gosh, that's gross. Ooh. Oh. Alright, well, let's continue swatching, I guess. Ooh. So continuing on from that interruption, yeah, that was a weird marker, but don't think it's just the super marker brand. I have seen some funky Copic markers in my day. Some of the blacks get all crystallized on the nib. It's very strange, but just letting you know, it's not just these markers, I think. So I'm just finishing up my swatches here, and I'm actually kind of proud of my swatch chart. It looks very nice and neat and very crafty and cute. It's not cute, but you know, it looks nice. And now I'm starting by sketching my drawings for the Copic markers. I decided to go with something easy and simple that I could do really quickly, and I have a natural aptitude for drawing braids, I think. You might think my braids are very disgusting, but I think I'm good at drawing braids. So I drew some braids. And now I'm starting by picking out my super marker colors to color in the braid. I decided the more intricate one was going to go for the super markers. That may be putting it at a little disadvantage, but I'm not really sure. I thought it would be better than the bigger one because the bigger one, it's harder for Copics to get small details for me personally. So I figured that the smaller braid would be good for the super markers because I thought originally I was going to be using the chisel nib primarily, but I actually used the chisel nib. I meant to say bullet nib before, but I was impressed. I could get to the small details easily with the chisel nib, so it wasn't too difficult, and I like, jazzing it up with different shapes. So I'm really happy. One thing I do not like about drawing hair with these markers is you don't get that nice natural flick. I mean, hair has that flick, It's not just stopping lines. But if you're blending it out, it's not too horrible, I guess. But it's not the best it could be. I still really like this braid, and I think for these markers it did a very nice job. It might also be the difference between the two braids in the end. Might also be I'm more experienced with Copics and the brush nib versus using a chisel nib. I'm not a chisel nib professional by any means, so that might also be part of my struggle with the chisel nib. Alright, so I just finished the super marker illustration. This is just a normal braid. I think it turned out actually pretty good. It looks really good on camera. For this braid, I used the chisel end of the super markers to do it because the bullet nib would simply be too small, and it's actually not as good as I find with the chisel nib. The chisel nib is kind of like a hard brush nib in a sense. So I was originally thinking of using the chisel nib on the Copics just to give the super markers a little bit more of a fair chance, but then I thought while I was doing the coloring for this, I was thinking, well, Copics are obviously more expensive and a premium art supply, and I don't think it's fair to the Copics to demote them to make them on the level of something only 1/5 of the price of them. So I thought, if we're doing a true comparison, obviously these are definitely going to be better, but I just wanted to show its full potential on the screen, and this was the full potential I could get with the supplies. So I want both to have an equal shot of what they are. And welcome back to voiceover. I know, I'm back. You're super excited! But this time we are doing the Copic braid, which I had so much fun doing. I had fun with both, but this one went a lot quicker because I think, again, I'm more experienced with that brush nib, so I can really work my thing and do my thing. The thing I love about drawing braids is it's so a meditative process for me because it's such a simple thing. You just flick your brush and just wing it, and it's fun. It really is fun. So I highly recommend trying to color in braids. And if you need a tutorial, let me know. I can make one of those, I think. So I'm actually really happy with how the contrast of the colors went in this piece. I was originally contemplating how good that would be, but it actually looks pretty good. So I kind of feel bad for the super markers because if I did that for that one, I think it might look better too. But overall, I'm pretty happy with both of these braids, and I'm happy I have 2 new braid drawings because you can't have enough braid drawings, right? Right. Alright, let's get into regular talking mode live. So I just finished the Copic illustration, and here it is. I'm actually really happy with the outcome. My personal thoughts on the subject is this one is worse, but there are a few reasons I have for that. One, the colors are different, and I think this one actually looks good with more highlights. This one had more color matching, which I do like, but I also really like this one too. But here are a few technical things that might help your decision of why this one is superior to this one, other than my color choices. One thing is, obviously these markers have the chisel nib, and with the chisel nib comes a straight up advantage. With the brush nib you can get the flicks of the hair, and it's so much smoother and blends nicely, but with the chisel nib there's a harder time with that. I also found when using these markers that they weren't as juicy or as blendable as the Copic markers. I think part of the reason would be the brush nib, but I also think it will be the formula that is found within the markers. It's obviously a cheaper formula and not as well done as the Copic markers. That's to be expected, of course, from Copic markers because they are 4 to 5 times the price of these super markers. Now, here is my opinion on buying these markers. I highly recommend them for anyone who wants to do lots of coloring with small details, things like that, and doesn't have a high budget. With the Copic markers, it's so expensive that you're not going to have a lot of colors, so like here, I had a gap in my color palette. But if you want a broad spectrum of colors, you're not going to have a lot in each spectrum, well, part of the spectrum. Whereas by buying this, you're only spending $40 for this. This is 50 cents a marker to get all these colors, which is huge. There is a ton of colors in here, and I think that is really beneficial for someone who wants to have lots of colors to choose from, blendable options that doesn't have to restrain their art to a certain color palette or color restraints in blendability and looks. I did find that these blended a lot better, and the flick of the brush pen also helps with the blendability as well. One thing I do have to say about Copics also is they have a more cohesive and lucid look. They're vibrant, they're there, but when you're blending with these, they seem to get washed out and musty. I'm not sure exactly why that is. Overall, I think these super markers are a great buy, and for something that's not a name brand, for markers that are cheap, I think they did a pretty good job. I highly recommend them if you don't want to spend money on Copics, or you could get a mix of both, and I think it will work really well together. So I hope you all enjoyed this video. Goodbye!